Halloween, my favorite day of the whole year. Never mind Christmas, it's too joyful. Never mind Thanksgiving, it stands in the way of Christmas. Never mind St. Patrick's Day, it's a day to excuse unhealthy drinking. And never mind my own birthday, who even cares about my own date of birth? Halloween, on the other hand, is so much more than just your typical holiday. It's a day of fun, a day of festivities, and most importantly, a day of horror. On Halloween, we embrace horror. We want to be scared. And truth be told, no other holiday elicits such a response. No other holiday allows you to become whatever you'd like for a day, and have no one judge you. Unless, of course, you dress up as any of these offensive Halloween costumes, at least according to BuzzFeed. Halloween is an amazing holiday, one that should be celebrated by everyone. And for the most part, it is. Some celebrate it by going trick-or-treating, watching a scary movie, going to a party, or just staying indoors, I guess, reading a horror book. Whatever you do, it's none of my business. Regardless of how you may celebrate, I think we can all agree that Halloween is a fun holiday for ages young and old. Then again, as with any day of the year, bad things are also prone to happen whenever you step outside your home. Despite hyping up Halloween as this astounding holiday where nothing bad can happen, and for the most part, I argue it is, there is still malice in the world. And with that malice comes real, mysterious, maddening, terrifying horror. If you are going to go out tonight, be warned. Terrible things have happened on Halloween. The disappearance of Stephen Damon. On October 31st, 1955, a young mother, Marilyn Damon, took her 2-year-old son, Stephen, and her 7-month-old daughter, Pamela, to a supermarket in East Meadow, New York, in search of candy to pass around to the local trick-or-treaters. Marilyn's eldest, Stephen, was throwing a little tantrum and didn't want to go inside, and so she allowed him to stay outside, so long as he took care of his sister in her carriage. She stepped inside, and after 10 minutes of shopping, she found that both her children were missing. In a panic, she called the police, and they quickly got on the case. To their relief, the carriage was found only a block and a half away from where it had gone missing. Eerily, despite Pamela being found in the carriage, safe and sound, Stephen was nowhere to be found, and has yet to be seen to this day. A case of mistaken identity. In Pasadena, California, 1993, 3 boys, all around the ages of 13 to 14, were out trick-or-treating when they found themselves caught in a hail of gunfire. In an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, 3 members of a blood gang waited patiently for the boys to approach. They were under the notion that the 3 boys were part of a rival gang who were responsible for killing one of their friends only a couple days earlier. As the 3 young trick-or-treaters got closer, the 3 gang members pulled their triggers without hesitation. All 3 boys died on scene. As for the gang members, well, they were convicted and sentenced to death in 1995. One of them cursed the jury, one flashed gang signs as he was taken away, and the last simply stayed silent. But all 3 still remain on death row to this day. The death of Chris Jenkins. 21-year-old University of Minnesota student Chris Jenkins went out with his friends Halloween night, 2002, near downtown Minneapolis bar. They were each having a fun time, laughing at each other's costumes, dancing, and drinking, of course. As the night went on, each of them went home, one by one, until Chris was the only one left at the bar. At around midnight, Chris decided to head home, and as it stands, the bartender was the last to see Chris alive. That night, he vanished without a trace, and became a missing person for 4 months, until his body was discovered in the Mississippi River. He washed up, still wearing his costume from that Halloween night. His death ruled a suicide. Come fall 2006, after his family continued to press police to keep investigating, Chris Jenkins' mysterious suicide was later classified as a homicide. His death, speculated by some to be the result of the smiley face killer. A real-life boogeyman. On October 31st, 1981, Maria Cialela was on her way home from a late-night trip of trick-or-treating. The young 17-year-old was hanging out with some friends before she made her way home. She waved them goodbye and was on her way. Unfortunately, Maria, on her way home, encountered convicted criminal Richard Biegenwald, who quickly abducted her. He took her into his mother's house, shot her, and dismembered her. He buried Maria's remains in the backyard. Disturbingly, Biegenwald's wife knew of his crimes, but did nothing about them. He showed his wife Maria's corpse, and when she asked him why he did it, he simply responded with, "I did it for the hell of it." Not your typical trick-or-treater. On Halloween 1982, in Fort Dodge, Iowa, 69-year-old Marvin Brandland and his wife Ethel were handing out candy to trick-or-treaters who came by to pay them a visit. Little did they know that one trick-or-treater in particular would be the end of Marvin. At one point, when they heard a knock at the door, they stood dumbfounded as a man wearing a mask quickly stated, "Trick or treat. Give me your money or I'll shoot." Initially, they thought this was some kind of prank. That was until the man barged in and drew his gun. He then demanded the couple take him downstairs to the basement and opened the safe where the couple stashed their money. They quickly grew suspicious, as only a few people knew of that safe: his closest friends and his family. As the three made it downstairs, Marvin reached for his gun, and the intruder shot him point blank in the neck, killing Marvin almost instantly. This death left Ethel distraught, and she became reclusive. She refused to speak with anyone, and eventually, she was so traumatized that a few months later, she ended up passing away. A lifelike display. In Frederick, Delaware, 2005, locals were out having fun as they went around town in search of candy. The town was littered with Halloween decorations. There were pumpkins galore, cobwebs aplenty, and rubber props laying around. The town was full of decor, so one, hypothetically speaking, could hang themselves on a tree and they wouldn't stand out too much. If only it were simply a hypothetical question though. That Halloween night, a 42-year-old woman committed suicide by hanging herself on a tree. Her body hung 15 feet high, and no one was ever the wiser. Trick-or-treaters would pass by under it, and the body hung there without any alarm for a good while. It simply went unnoticed that this body was actually real and simply not just another prop. It was only noticed the following day, when neighbors decided to take a closer look, thinking it was just a prank. Once they did, they could smell and see the prop for what it really was: the decomposing corpse of a distraught woman. The sacrilegious murder. St. Francis Convent in Amarillo, Texas, was the site of a horrific murder on Halloween night, 1981. Across the street from the convent in Amarillo, lived a very disturbed individual, 17-year-old Johnny Frank Garrett. On that Halloween night, he decided to break into the convent, where one of the nuns, who was asleep, woke up and found him standing above her. 76-year-old sister, Tedia Benz, could do nothing as the 17-year-old sexually assaulted her, and then proceeded to stab her 46 times, ending the poor woman's life. Garrett left her to bleed out, but not before leaving a mountain of evidence against him. They found his fingerprints and DNA on and near the corpse, which resulted in his arrest. He was found guilty and was sentenced to death via lethal injection in 1991. Halloween candy. On Halloween night of 2011, a woman, Maria Adams, 49, was stabbed by her neighbor, a friend, multiple times with several steak knives. Her supposed friend, Leto Peoples, 55, stabbed Maria over missing bags of Halloween candy. Peoples accused Maria of taking the bags, but when she claimed she didn't do so, he became enraged and started to attack her. She tried her best to defend herself, but was sadly unable to. Afterwards, she was taken to a hospital in critical condition and died 1 week later. Orange socks. On Halloween 1979, the body of an unidentified woman was found near Interstate 35 right outside Georgetown, Texas. Investigators found that she was strangled to death, and there were signs that indicated she had been sexually assaulted right before her untimely demise. The 20-year-old Jane Doe had nothing on her but a silver, oval-shaped ring on her hand, and the only thing she was wearing was a pair of orange socks. Because Jane Doe was never identified, she was nicknamed after the only piece of garment she was wearing: orange socks. Come a few years later, serial killer Henry Lee Lucas confessed to Orange Socks' murder, but would later recant his confession. Upon further investigation, it was found that Lucas could not have killed Orange Socks, as he was likely working that day. Regardless, he died in 2001 in prison, and the murder of Orange Socks would remain a cold case. The man who killed Halloween. Filicide, the murder of one's own child, is one of the most horrific things a parent could do, and it would take a seriously disturbed individual to do so. Meet Ronald Clark O'Brien, who on Halloween night, 1984, was responsible for this very act. O'Brien at the time was in great debt, and to try and counteract that, he took out life insurance on his own son, with the intention of killing him. To collect on his health insurance, he laced pixie sticks with potassium cyanide, which, if you didn't know, is incredibly lethal. He gave the pixie sticks to his daughter, his son, and his son's friends, but ultimately, only his son ate the candy. The community quickly went into a panic, but suspicion quickly fell upon O'Brien. Once arrested, he maintained that he was innocent throughout the duration of the trial, but was ultimately convicted in 1984 and sentenced to death, which was eventually carried out 1 year later. His story would later become the origin for urban legends like the Candyman and the horrific tales of something dangerous hidden in your candy. His cruel, demented act truly scarred the image of Halloween, and it's because of him that many don't celebrate the holiday, even to this day. Despite what you've heard, Halloween is still an amazing holiday. One you can spend with your friends or your family, and one that should be celebrated. Don't spend your day indoors, unless you're watching a horror movie, of course. Whatever you decide to do, Just remember, be safe. I would hate to see you end up on a list like this.